Hunting your bus to journey onward by Master Atlan, Chapter 63, Face the Ghosts That Linger. Everything had started to blend, everything started to blend together. His head hurt, it felt like there was an unbearable ache in his brain he couldn't hope to stop. Waking up led into second period turning to lunch. When he was getting ready to eat, he found himself already preparing for a spar, and before he knew it, his friends were asking what was wrong. But before it all ended with him going to bed and starting over, his thoughts were quick and indecipherable. The image he had been struggling to find and see clearly vanished before he had a chance to focus on them. His memories of his parents hadn't gotten any better. More moments of their time together came to him, but they were still clouded by a fog he couldn't lift. The technique for trying to remember something traumatic, closing his eyes and meditating even more, read his mind as he remembered what he could about his parents barely helping him make a clear picture. The only thing that he had learned from all this training, the feeling of running and fear gripping his heart, hiding behind trees, something hot and screaming. That's all Sasuke could recollect after his efforts, and when he tried to remember more, it hurt him. Sasuke, the black-haired teen, was pulled from his thoughts. He faced Naruto, Tenten, and Kiba with worried looks on their faces. Their friends were down the hall waiting for them to rejoin, and had his concern clearly on their mind. Naruto let go of his shoulder. "What's up with you? You look like you're about to be sick." "I do." Sasuke touched his forehead and felt it hotter than usual. "It's nothing. You've been like this for a few days. Is something going on?" "It's nothing." And Sasuke avoided Kiba's line of questioning. "I'm just trying to concentrate on something." "What's wrong?" Tenten stepped forward to face her partner with a troubled expression. "If there's something bothering you or you need help with, I'm fine." And Sasuke cut her off quickly by stepping back and shaking his head. His tone was weary, but his words were certain and sharp, stopping his teammates from continuing their questions. The young Chio rubbed his head. "I'm sorry if I'm making you all worried, but I promise this isn't something I can't handle. I'll be fine. I'll talk with you all later." The other members of Noctix watched their friend walk off. His words promising he was okay, but the weakened pace of his usual solid walk catching their eye. They looked between each other unconvinced before returning to join their friends. By the looks on their faces, they shared the sentiment. He's all right?" Yang asked first. The tired and beaten look really doesn't suit him. Ruby looked up at her fellow leader. "Is there anything we can do?" "Yeah." Yang grinned and pointed back towards the dorm. "I mean, we have more than enough training dealing with Mookie dark-haired teens going through adolescence. She is not gonna be happy when she hears you said that." Naruto shrugged in fright. "That's why we ain't gonna tell her I said it," Yang warned before looking between her friends. But I mean it. We'll help however we can. We'd appreciate your help, but we honestly don't know what's bothering him," Tenten said. "But I know it has to do with something serious. His behavior reminds me of when he was dealing with us finding out about his brother. Well, maybe Ino knows something." All eyes turned to Nora as she suddenly jumped in. "I saw Sasuke talking with her yesterday. They were all hush and sneaky before they rushed off. Ren and I saw it in our way back from breakfast." The short ginger-haired girl pointed to her partner for confirmation as he gave a short nod. "Oh, maybe they're having secret rendezvous," Ruby gasped. "Like they're going out?" "Oh, come on." Kiba sounded skeptical. "Even if he was going out with her, would he be this cautious about it? And does that look like the face of a guy with a new girlfriend? He looks like he's about to kill over." Yang shrugged. "Well, you can't get exhausted if your partner is very excitable." "Yang, I'm just saying it's a possibility, but they don't really strike me as a couple." The brawler crossed her arms over her chest. "I mean, if he's got a girlfriend now, then good for him. Not exactly the ship I have stock in, but if he's happy, then power to him. Let's move past the girlfriend angle for a minute, okay?" Wai stood over to the side and listened to them blather on, tossing around convoluted theories and suggestions that ranged from plausible to just downright ridiculous. Unfortunately, Ruby gets his range to the inane inside of the spectrum, but luckily no one went further than Nora's gender swap clone from the future, given a warning of the end of the world. The Harris's eyes turned back in the direction she had seen the Uchiha drag himself away. She didn't believe any of the ideas her friends were raising, and she doubted that whatever he was involved with had anything possible to do about it. He looked so distracted and pensive for anything good to be involved, but it was his dilemma, and he didn't want anyone else involved, so it must have been private. They just had to trust him despite his muddied history of doing well with subjects like that, and it wasn't her business to pry. Hunting. The feeling of running and fear gripping his heart, hiding behind trees, something hot and screaming. That was the key to finding what he was looking for in his memories. He just had to find the context of what it meant, and he'll found what he needed. Uchiha's legs bounced restlessly as he waited for Ino's arrival on one of Beacon's balconies. Hopefully none of his teammates or friends would find him here and stop him from finishing this so close to the end. Sasuke, you're here. Sasuke rubbed his head and stood up when he heard her arrive. Thanks for coming again. Yeah, Ino laughed nervously. Don't thank me just yet. Sasuke turned around and was surprised to see Wai standing beside the awkwardly laughing blonde psychic. The look on her face was enough of an indicator that even though she didn't know what was going on, she wasn't amused by it. His expression shifted. What are you doing here? Everyone else was worried about you and throwing out ideas I couldn't stand listening to anymore, so I just told them I would ask her what was going on with you. Weiss pointed to the taller girl beside her, and when she started sputtering and tripping over her own words for an excuse, I knew it had to be something bad, so I followed along, and here you are. The two stubborn hunters stared each other down, especially the other to get a clue. But the only one suffering from the tension was Ino, who couldn't have looked more uncomfortable if she tried. Ino clapped. Okay, so obviously there's something here that needs to be cleared out between you two. So I'm just going to be sitting over here. Tell me when I can come back in. They watched the platinum blonde girl step off to the side of the balcony and leave them to settle their matter. White crossed her arms impatiently and raised a delicate eyebrow and waited. Sasuke rolled his eyes. I didn't think I was making them worry this much. You don't hide your worries nearly as well as you think you do. White stated. Of course, everyone else let their imaginations bleed through, and everything under the sun came to mind as to what was happening with you. Even the most expected and logical ones were unacceptable. Like what? White's eyes turned to the girl sitting on another bench, casually skimming her scroll. It doesn't matter. It's clear they were wrong, but that does raise the question. White strolled up to the bench and looked with unwavering resolve into his eyes. What are you doing here? I told them not to worry. You look physically ill. Of course they're going to worry. How can you, after all this time at Beacon, expect them not to worry? Fair enough. Sasuke rubbed his face and sat back into the bench for a break. When he was seated, he turned his head and looked up at the sneak girl. And were you worried? Oh please, I have other things to concern myself with. The proud girl scoffed. I just thought I would see if there was anything I could do. Despite how things proceed towards the end of the first semester, I do still owe you a lot for helping me when the year started. Weiss stepped up to the bench and looked out at the sky as the sun grew closer to setting. Do you remember this place? Yeah, Sasuke nodded as he looked out over the campus from his seat. This is where I talked to you after our first class with Porta, after you snapped at Ruby for her immaturity. I was annoyed because of her lack of discipline and blasé attitude during our lessons, which if anything was only gotten worse over the last few months. Weiss defended an exaggerated tone as it earned a quick chuckle from Sasuke. The ivory-haired girl looked down at him. Not that I look back at it, I suppose you gave me that advice while you were trying to have more of an accommodating personality. My behavior was faked, but I tried to say what I thought was right, and I hope it would reach you. Sasuke answered stoically before looking up to see Weiss's firm expression. He let out a short sigh. I guess it's not much of consolation, is it? Well, I thought it was good advice at the time, Weiss admitted. The Harrison swordsman stayed in silence before she shuffled in place. So, why did you apologize to me? He raised his brow. After we had ambushed Torchwick at the White Fangs assembly, you blindsided me with a sudden apology. Tell me you were sorry for everything. What possessed you to do that? Nothing possessed me, but I was egged on, Sasuke confessed. Yang and I had a discussion about certain things. He remained vague about the specifics, but she said something along the lines of us both being hard-headed and how we should both say sorry. Oh, did she now? I want to apologize for everything that happened and everything that changed. I know it wasn't the most lively of friendships, but we did have some camaraderie, and that only faltered once my behavior started to change. I didn't care about how you acted or if you could put on a fake smile. Weiss said sternly, finally stepping around the bench and taking a seat by Uchiha. I cared that you were keeping everything about you and Naruto a secret. I was infuriated that everything up to that point could have been a lie. I wasn't. He caught himself before he could finish his response. Weiss's eyes were still very focused and close to a glare, but he spotted a hint of something mixed in them that stopped him from finishing. He nodded. Not everything was a lie. Weiss stayed silent before nodding in return. I know that now, but it doesn't help matters when you do things like this. I'm not lying to them. and not telling them what matters isn't much better. I don't want to keep. I don't want to keep this from them. But I just have. But I can't. But I can't have them involved in this. Not yet. Sasuke said. Not until it's over. Wai stared at the young man intently as they sat in silence. Her eyes wandering down and saw the wrappings that covered his hands, resting in his lap as he unconsciously rubbed and massaged the palms with his thumb. Wai sighed before shifting her legs to turn towards him and offering her hands. Give me your hands. Sasuke blinked. What? Your hands? Give them to me. Sasuke continued to stare at her oddly before she clapped. I'm not asking again. He reluctantly turned into the spot and laid his hands over hers. His bandaged hands completely covered hers from their difference in size. While he gently started to massage the injured skin and muscle through the new wrappings. Weiss found the task at hand. Weiss found the task at hand, but felt Sasuke's gaze on her. Nor told us about how you needed help opening and closing your hands in your rehabilitation, and didn't say she did the same thing for you. They worry about you and care about you, even though you won't tell them what this is all about. That doesn't change. That doesn't change one bit. Weiss. Hush! Weiss shushed him while she concentrated. I know not everything in the world needs a group or a team to complete, but there are some things that are too heavy to be one person's burden. This might be one of them, if even you're struggling to handle it. The hair's grip softened as she stared down into the bandages over his palm. If it's too difficult asking someone to help you, there's something I learned after all my time here. She took a deep breath. How long do I have to do this anyway? You don't. You hadn't had to do that exercise in weeks. Weiss froze in shock before looking up at the slightly amused smile on his face. Her cheeks heated up and she threw his hands away like they were hot iron. Why did you tell me that? Why didn't you tell me that sooner? I tried to, but you told me to be quiet. You should have tried harder. The huntress frowned and shuffled in her seat, and so she was faced away from the swordsman, scowling and muttered angrily. She looked over her shoulder and yelled, "Don't you come any closer! I don't want you involving my mind, sweetie. I don't need to read your mind to know what's on it right now." Ino smirked. Her snot rebuttal earning an annoyed groan from the prim and proper girl. The blonde visitor sat against the back of the bench and crossed her arms before looking down at Sasuke. You should tell her. I think we both know that she made some good points. Weiss shut up in her seat and turned to face them, making Sasuke frown and look up at accusingly. And considering what we're trying to do, at least one person should know how to help you. What is she talking about? Weiss looked between them both. What is she helping you with exactly? He ran a hand over his eyes and hoped that it would alleviate some of the strain and sleep, but the ache still persisted in his head. Nothing he did was going to stop it, and it was going to get worse if he didn't get back to it. He looked at Weiss through the opening of his fingers and then back up at Ino. With a deep breath, he pulled his hands back. Do you remember what I told you about my parents? Weiss hesitated before shaking her head in shame. I'm sorry, I can't remember what you told me. He nodded. That's the point. I couldn't tell you anything because I couldn't remember them. Everything I thought I knew was just covered in a blur. I couldn't get through. I thought that was natural because they died when I was young, but apparently there was more to it than that. I hid them away in the back of my mind. I repressed something about them. Weiss looked at him for a few moments before her eyes slowly widened. She looked at him, then up at Ino before turning back to him. No, don't tell me you're doing what I think you're doing. I just need to try a little harder. This is not the way to deal with something so traumatic. Weiss jumped out of her seat. Something so serious needs to be dealt with in time, months, even years of actual therapeutic sessions to deal with the root of the problem directly, not just battling through your subconscious in a matter of days. Of course you're lethargic. Of course you look like you're going to be sick. This stupid and reckless, idiotic and now you know why I couldn't tell them yet. Weiss balked in disbelief at the absurdity of what she was hearing. She turned to Ino in a glare. Did you think this was a good idea? Not even a little. Then why in the world did you go along with it? Because he was set on doing it himself, and this way, shrugged. I thought I could help. She frowned and stared at Sasuke with disappointment before grabbing Ino's arm and pulling her aside. When the two were out of earshot, the hairs continued her reprimanding. This isn't helping him. This is enabling him, and it can only make things worse. You need to stop. I can't stop. I don't think he will. Said, I can do what I can now, having brought him to this point, and try to help help him finish it, or I can walk away and leave him to try and do it all by himself. Either way, he's going to try and finish it. Weiss still looked upset and angered by her decision, but just pointed back to the bench. You should keep talking to him. He's too stubborn for me to convince. I know. Sadly chuckled. But with you here, I think this is the calmest and most centered he's been in the last few days. The Harris frown deepened before she saw the sincerity in the platinum blonde's eyes. Her eyes softened in turn, guilty for snapping at the new girl before she fixed her hair. Why do you want to help him so much anyways? I was the one that found his repressed memory. I was the one who told him, so it's my responsibility to help him with it. Answered. Plus, I thought it might be the first time I could use my semblance for good. Good. If your semblance is as useful as you said, then I'm sure you could do plenty for good. Yeah, I guess from a professional standpoint, it could be used for interrogation and information gathering or whatever. But this power does more harm than good. Said with a bittersweet laugh. You know how I discovered my semblance? It was when my boyfriend broke up with me. He told me that our interests just weren't lining up anymore, and that he thought it would be best if we stopped now for both our sakes. But then I gave him a hug and I heard his thoughts. Turns out he was sick of the fact I wasn't putting out and was going after a girl that had promised him a treat if he dumped me. That's horrible. Yeah, it sucked. Then my friends found out I could do this and treated it like a fun parlor trick, which was funny at first. But then they started accusing me of getting dirt on them and ratting them out on their parents when they snuck off to parties or whatever. Apparently, they didn't realize that they just sucked at keeping secrets and threw all their crap on me instead. It got so bad I only have 2 friends anymore, and I can keep them because they don't bother hiding secrets. Weiss was disgusted by what she heard. Continued to smile bitterly as she flexed her gloved hands. I never really liked this power and tried to make the most of it by just using it in short bursts for fun. But when he came to me and thanked me for telling him about what I found, I thought maybe I could go a little farther and actually use it to help someone properly for once. Chuckled darkly. But I realized that wasn't working as well as I thought when he started gagging and forcing his lunch down. Now I'm not totally sure if I'm sticking through this to help him or prove myself right. But it's pretty clear you have his best interest at heart. He's a friend. Weiss said. Of course, his best interests are my concern. Smiled knowingly. Then if you want us to stop, then I'm willing to. But I'm not the one you have to convince. The Harris frown deepened before she sighed and rubbed the bridge of her nose. Weiss made her way back around the bench and sat down beside the pensive Uchiha. The hunters noticed just how focused he was. That he didn't even take notice of her return. This is really important to you, isn't it? I wouldn't be putting myself through this if I didn't think it was. He answered while rubbing his face. I know how my reaction should be enough of a warning that I wasn't ready for this, and I know trying to force myself to remember something like this wasn't the best decision. I shouldn't keep it from my team and my friends. So why? Because I'm close. I'm this close to remember my parents. Sasuke answered. If the others knew what was happening, they'd want me to stop and try something else. But if I can just hold out a little longer and power through it, I'll have my parents back. Sasuke whispered. So if you can't stand watching me like this and you have to tell the others, then just give me a little bit longer. Weiss took a deep breath. What are you going to do when you learn the truth about your parents? Because so far all we've talked about is what you've been doing, and now what comes after all this, all the settled. The silence remained before she continued. What happens if this hurts you worse than it already has? Then I just have to rely on my team. Sasuke casually remarked, making Weiss worry more about the complete disregard he had for the state he'd be in if he succeeded with his efforts. They're the ones I need to rely on. They're the only ones I have left. The Harris creased her brow. What do you mean by that? I mean what I said. Team Noctis is the only family I have left that I can rely on. My mother and father are gone. Itachi's nowhere to be found, and even if he's still alive, I've destroyed any possibility of us reconciling by abandoning him and betraying his trust, and the Uchiha have been wiped off the face of the planet. So Naruto, Tenten, and Kiba are the only people I have left. Sasuke rubbed his eyes sadly. I'm the only person left to remember all the ones who are gone, but my brother is a man who kidnapped all the people I cared about, and put my best friend in the hospital. My family is as a bunch of disgraced mystical warriors remembered through time as war criminals, and my most recognized relative is a psychopath who went mad and started hunting people down like a serial killer. So the fact I pushed my parents down, as far as my mind could possibly hide them, makes me think that maybe that trend continued, and the idea that I might be the exception to whatever evil courses through my family's veins is becoming closer to just inevitable. Sasuke was silenced with a quick punch to his arm. He felt no pain from the jab. That was more of the shock of jolting him out of his musings. When he looked up, he saw her glaring at him, irritated and angered by what he had said in his tirade. Sorry, Sasuke apologized. I'm just being dramatic at this point. He tried to disarm the Shinee bomb, but simply resigned himself to whatever punishment she was thinking up to explode against him. I don't think my parents were like that, but there's just a part of me that has to accept that it could be a possibility. I just want to know about them. Weiss wanted nothing more than shoot the idiot out and make him regret that thought process. She'd slap him if she wasn't sure it would floor him in his current condition. The hair stood out of her seat and crossed her arms as she tried to calm herself down. It was clear she was a small part of his mind that considered it a possibility, but with the Uchiha's checkered past, it made some sense that he would be concerned. She looked at her friend in silence and noticed just how different he looked when burdened by so much uncertainty and anxiety. He looked up at her and waited for a response. She sighed and sat down beside him. I don't think I have the right to talk to you about family. You know, I hardly have such a shining example of familial love like the others do. My relationship with my brother and father is the kind I'd rather bury and hide forever than proudly boast and cheer about. So if I was in your position, I don't think I'd go this far for them. But this isn't about me, and it isn't about your parents either. This is about you. Weiss turned to her friend. If this will bring you some modicum of peace of mind, then you should follow through with it. But when you're done, you need to tell the others what you did, because you need their help afterwards. And if there's anything you need from me, don't hesitate to ask. If you want me to stay or to go, tell me. Sasuke took a deep breath. Actually, I'll need your help. Hunting, looked over from her scroll when she saw Sasuke and Weiss approaching. She slipped her device away and stood up. So, what's the verdict? And Sasuke and Weiss shared a look before motioning her to follow. Then back to the bench. The blonde girl took a deep breath, pulling off her gloves and freeing her hands. Weiss stood to the side as Ino took the seat next to him. She held out her hands. Whenever you're ready. Sasuke felt Weiss's hand rest on his shoulders and squeezed it for support before she pulled back. She laid his hands over Ino's and closed his eyes, clearing his mind and ignoring anything else but the matter at hand. He followed Ino's directions, deep breaths in and out to ease his body and make his mind calmer. Once he did, he focused only on the things he needed to: his father, his mother, his family, his memories. Good, that's really good, Ino whispered. Everything is clear and... Wait, there's the echo. Vague memories of their times spent together before becoming clear as he remembered the time after when all he had left was Itachi. He tried to think back as best he could, but tensed and shuddered as something made him stop him. Stay calm, it's okay. Ino's words fell on deaf ears as Sasuke realized his whole body had started to shake. The image zooming past him as he ran, fear gripping his heart, trees, heat, and someone screaming. He felt a squeeze on his shoulder before a soft voice whispered behind him. Listen to the vine, falling so slow. Her voice was like a lullaby, so soft and soothing. He felt his fear and anxiety melt away, like fragile tiny shells drifting in the foam. Her voice was so beautiful. How had he never noticed that before? Little soldier, come marching home. The voice mixed and molded with another as the sun calmed him down. He felt a gentle hand run through his hair so softly he could have fallen asleep. He opened his eyes and looked up to see a taller woman bending down and rubbing his head as he slept. The beautiful woman noticed that he had awakened and stopped her lullaby to smile at him. Brave soldier boy, come marching home. He sat up from the forest ground and looked over when he heard a rustling through the trees. A young boy and a stern-faced man walking out of the trees with swords in their hands. The boy was exhausted while the older man wasn't even winded. The black-haired boy noticed he had awakened and came running over to say hello with a smile. The older man placed his exquisite katana to the side and looked back to see him staring at him. He showed a smile before working back on the fire. Those leaves did grow from branches overgrown. They didn't seem as big now as they made their way through the bustling city streets. His hand was being held by his mother while his brother occupied the other one. Their father was leading them ahead, the bags carried on his back. As he searched for a place to stay, he looked back for a moment and thought that some people were following to join them, but his mother was quick to pull him ahead and away from them. Apparently they weren't friendly. Drifting softly down, resting on the loam. Their mother stayed with them in a room while him and Itachi played a game. The door opened as his father walked back in, his clothes muddied and looking more tired than he did when he left. His mother was quick to his side as they whispered to each other and hugged. He watched his father sit in a corner of the room and pull out a clean cloth. He stepped in closer and noticed the sheen of blood that covered the portion of the sword. He wiped the blood clean, but stopped to look down at his young son, who stared at his reflection in the blade and marveled at its shine. His father showed a smile, a rare occurrence for the usually stoic man. Before he reached out and patted his head, his hands were very strong. Little soldier boy, taken from home. They camped out under the night sky again, in sleeping bags and around a fire. Even though from time to time they would sleep in a proper building or room, he enjoyed these moments outside with them the most. Him and Itachi making s'mores and snacks around the fire, their mother regaling them with grand tales of heroes and battles that always entertained them. And to the side he could see his father practicing with his sword, making such swift and confident movements that the sword looked to disappear for a moment. He wondered one day if he could learn swordplay from him like Itachi did. Forced to fight a war that's not his own. They made their way through another town, prepared to find a place to stay while father took another job. He stated that when he returned, he wanted him to sit down and watch Itachi's next training session. It was time for him to learn how to fight as well. He was so happy that his father was finally going to let him join, that he beamed a smile at his mother and brother. Itachi congratulated him while his mother looked conflicted but still smiled. But then they stopped. He looked up and around at the numerous people that surrounded them. Some looked like faunus, others were humans, all of them armed, and the rest of the streets emptied out in a few seconds. Itachi pulled him in closer. Their mother stood in front of them, and his father slowly drew his blade. Leaves from the vine are falling so slow. They ran through the forest as quickly as possible, as trees blurred around them. He couldn't keep up, but was pulled by his mother's hand while Itachi led them from ahead. He tried to look back, but couldn't see nothing. Only hearing the gunshots and angry roars. One of the men made his way in front of them and swung, aiming to cut them up with no hesitation. He lunged, but their mother met him halfway and grabbed his wrist. She disarmed him, and his father was running in and left a cut on his side. Both his parents standing by each other as their assailants dropped to his knees. They attacked him about why he was doing this, and he screamed that their blood was sick, like fragile tiny shells drifting in the foam. The faunus was suddenly attacked by a wolf and torn apart. Itachi pulled him in closely as their parents quickly guarded them. More and more grimaces started to prowl around them, attacking the people that had chased them into the forest and stalking them like prey. Itachi's arm shivered around him while he felt fear worse than any other grip his heart. They waited and waited until the grim finally pounced them. Little soldier boy says, carry me home. Mother and father held them off valiantly, avoiding their swipes and striking when they found the opportunity. He called out to them, but Itachi pulled him in and away from the fighting. They hid behind the trunk of a tree and watched their parents fend off the horde of monsters that surrounded them. The monsters faded away, hope filled the chest, until a deep growl echoed into his ears. Brave sleeping soldier boy is carried home. An alpha bear wolf stalked up out of the shadows and spotted him and his brother by the tree. He let out a frightened yell, and Itachi grabbed him before shielding him with his own body. He could see past his brother while the grim attacked, but two shadows jumped in front of them. His father's foremost, and his mother covered them. The shadow of the monster covered them. Its claws flashing for just a moment before swinging in towards them. But his mother only smiled at them. He saw her smile, staring into her eyes. She confessed her love for them, and then it was warm, so very, very hot. The forest around him was being burned away in the rage of black flames that enveloped cries out in agony as the strange fires clung to their skin and reduced them to ash. Monsters cried out and died all around him. He didn't notice that his focus was solely on the two bodies that laid in front of him, mangled corpses that barely resembled people anymore, lying in pools of their own blood. His parents, Sasuke! Itachi came running up to his side and grabbed his shoulder. His brother pulled and forced him to look away. Specks and lines of blood covered his face, and his eyes were blood red like the father's as he said something. He couldn't hear because something was drying out his brother's voice. It took him a minute to realize that it was his own screaming. It'll be okay. Itachi pulled him in and hugged him tightly, his body still thrashing around as he screamed uncontrollably. Do you hear me? It'll be okay. I'm still here. We still have each other. He didn't stop crying. Sasuke! It hurt so much. Sasuke! Itachi gasped, the Uchiha gasped and lurched to the side as he retched. Cold sweat covered his cheeks as hot tears pricked his eyes. He was sure he'd drop on the ground in a heap if a pair of arms weren't circling around his shoulders to keep him up. He gasped for air and tried to calm down, but couldn't stop his panic attack. It's okay, Weiss yelled, trying to make sure he heard her as she held him closer. She looked up at Ino for support, only to see the blonde struggle to keep her composure, slipping off the bench and clutching her head. The hair is just focused on the boy struggling in her arms. I'm right here. She ran her hand through his hair in the hopes that it would give him peace of mind. He continued to panic, but one of his hands squeezed her arm while he gasped for fear. A tear came to her eye. I'm here. Hunting. He's later than I thought he'd be. Tenten continued to dig a rut in the floor. Her partner still hadn't come back from whatever he was doing, and it was making them worry. Naruto sat back in his bed and tapped his arm repeatedly as Kiba focused on cleaning his bed of a Kamaru's fur. He sighed and put his roller down. You both are gonna get an ulcer at this rate. Well, we're worried. Sue us. Naruto said, his ears flicking up as he frowned at his partner. Aren't you worried? Of course I am, and I'm getting a little deja vu from last semester as well, the dude man said, but this time I have my full and total trust in the fact he's gonna come back and tell us what's been going on with him, and if he doesn't, well, we can just give him a quick jab at the back of the head for worrying us. Tenten might just do that regardless, Naruto noted as the older girl frowned in his direction. Well, when he gets back, the door opened and they went silent as their fourth member walked in. The black-haired huntsman closed the door behind him and looked around at his friends. I'm sorry. Yeah, you should be. Kiba lifted off his pants. You had us worried. Naruto jumped out of his bed. Okay, spill it, man. Where you been and what have you been doing? I'm sorry. Sasuke and Tenten stepped up to her partner and showed him a stern expression. We want an answer. Where have you been this whole time? Please, just tell us. The raven-haired boy remained silent. His teammates stood in front of him patiently before he reached up and grabbed Tenten's shoulders. Sasuke, I'm sorry. You don't have to apologize. I'm sorry. His friends looked between each other oddly. What? I'm sorry. And Tenten felt weight on her shoulders and realized he was holding himself up. She helped lower him into the floor as his knees slammed into the floor, and he hung his head. Sasuke, I'm sorry. His voice was becoming louder and more desperate. It hitched as his apology mixed into a sob. I'm sorry. And Tenten pulled him into a hug and let him cry into her chest as she rubbed his back. Kiba and Naruto were on both sides of him and tried to calm him down as well. It wouldn't be for a while until he calmed down enough to tell them all what had happened. When he did, he had expected his team to chew him out for his reckless behavior and criticize his choice of action. All he got was a hug from his whole team and a promise that they would see him through this. Hunting. Weiss wasn't sure what she was feeling right now. There was a swirl of complicated feelings and emotions in her stomach right now that made her feel sick. Having helped Ino recover and walking her to her room was an odd experience. The session had taken a lot out of the blonde girl, but despite her exhaustion, she seemed to take pride that she was able to help Sasuke find the memories he was missing. Apparently apparently she had been so far out of it that she didn't see his initial reaction. She didn't want to leave Sasuke alone to head back to the dorm, but he was already making his way back when she helped. She ran back to the rooms and came just in time to hear Noctix reconcile and console the emotional boy. So that would have been everything. She didn't have the same idea of same kind of relationship with her family that he did. She wouldn't go as far for her mother or father, and if she didn't have to bother with her brother again, she'd count that as a blessing. However, her scroll rang as they dialed the number. She raised it to her ear and took a deep breath. There wasn't a reason to be nervous anyway. She was so busy that the call would just go to, "Hello, Winter. Yes, Weiss, you were the one who called me. Apologies. The white-clad girl flushed as she instinctively stood up straight. I just assumed it would go to your message box. I thought you'd be asleep considering the time difference. Weiss, is there a reason you are making this call? I had assumed it was important. She blanked. Actually, I told you to only use this line for emergencies. If you just using it for idle chit-chat, then you're wasting both mine and your time." Her voice was stern and harsh as ever. Weiss's gaze fell in shame. You're right. I'm sorry for troubling you. What's wrong? You sound different. Did something happen? She could notice. Weiss scoffed. No, nothing happened. I just forgot how long it's been since I last saw you and I. Winter, have you been well? I've been well. Weiss rolled her foot over the floor. I've been preparing for the Vital Festival tournament with my team. I imagine the victory will be very easy for us to obtain if I work with them. Weiss paused. Will you be able to come and see me perform? I have too many tasks and responsibilities. I can't waste the time coming to Vale just to watch you fight in the tournament. Of course, I'm sorry for forgetting. I'll have to watch your match from the stream instead, so don't disappoint. Weiss blushed. Of course. Weiss, I have to go. There's something that needs my attention. I have to cut this call short. I understand. Weiss stood up and nodded. Goodbye for now, Winter. Goodbye, Weiss. The call ended and the young Schnee lowered her scroll. She took a deep breath and wiped her eyes clean. She didn't dare walk into her room and give Yang and Ruby any reason to pester her. Once again, Weiss couldn't help but notice the parallels between her and Sasuke, their families, their history, their parents, and even their siblings. But she considered herself lucky on that front, at least in regards to her older sister, because while Weiss could still consider Winter could contact Winter, Sasuke might never have that luxury again. Hunting, Itachi made his way through the hallway and observed the sterile environment. Since arriving, he had been kept in a single cell with a change of clothes and meals provided for him. They even neutralized the dust in his arm and gave him a sedative to ease the pain, which deprived him of another weapon in an unfamiliar zone like this. But frankly, the lack of constant pain was something he was enjoying. He had been blindfolded and had his senses blocked while he and his people were being escorted here. Whether it was a ship or an underground bunker was total unknown. All he knew was that his door finally opened and he could walk out again. He stepped into a massive room with high ceilings and featureless walls, but the room wasn't empty as he spotted many familiar faces in similar clothes and just as confused. Itachi, Mr. Itachi, you okay? Everyone? They all surrounded him with expressions of relief and joy. There weren't as many here as there had been before the rig, but everyone present looked healthy and healed. His relief was evident in his voice. Thank God you're all right. Let me through. That boisterous, loud voice was immediately recognized as a short, blonde man pushed through the crowd to meet him. Theodore caught his breath and looked up at his leader. How the hell did they catch you? Did they raid the camp while you were sleeping? Did they threaten you? I knew there were spineless shitheads ambushing you while you're still recovering. I turned myself in. Theodore went silent as Itachi looked around. We all turned ourselves in. It was the only way we could see you all again. The members of the group that had been taken first looked around in surprise, turning to the members that came after. Theodore gritted his teeth. You should have left us. Itachi scoffed and patted his shoulder. Never. Stop pouting, Deidara. It's so gross. The two more figures made their way through the crowd to meet their leader. Drega looked fine. The young man at his side was a bit slow, but made her way through all right. Gurren had some bandages visible on her arm and shoulders, but the former assassin was solid on her feet. She smiled at her leader. Glad to see you again. I heard you got hurt, and then all healed up. Still stiff as hell, but I'll live. Our captors made sure she received the proper medical attention. Rega informed, as did we all when we were arrested. Did hissed him. I still can't believe they pulled that shit, wasting their time grabbing us instead of the white gang. I mean, we knocked them around enough that they should have been easier to find than us. I think most of the damage dealt their way came from our mutual attacker. For him, the bomber seat. If I ever get my hands on that annoying fucker, I swear I'll make him pop like a firework. Itachi turned to his calmer partner. Do you have any idea who it was that attacked you? Any traits or clues to remember? I have an idea. Gerd answered. I figured it out from what he said to me while we were fighting. I think he's the father of that Faunus kid from Sasuke's team. Itachi's eyes widened. Oh, that would explain a lot. Suddenly, much of the anger he felt towards their own assailant felt muddled. Reiko noticed the reaction and changed the subject. So, what now? What do you think they want us here for? When the doors to the room let out a mechanical hiss as it slid open, they all jumped into defensive positions as several shadowy figures became visible through the bright light. One man with faded blonde hair and a headband stepped into the room. He stepped aside and then stood at attention, steady in proper military form and unconcerned with the many harsh gazes being aimed his way. He had a pistol holstered on each leg, and the way he carried himself made it clear he was used to fighting. The next man stepped out was wearing the same attire as the other one, but was walking in with a very different demeanor. This man looked much more relaxed and unwound than his companion. Itachi recognized the droopy eyes and shaggy white hair that had found and taken him in. The next person to step in was a woman in the female version of their attitude. Her white hair was done up in a bun on one side that caused her bangs to conform around her face. Except for a curled lock of hair by her ear, her ice blue eyes pierced into them with like daggers as she stood at attention. The path at the saber at her side, clear in case she had to suddenly draw it. Finally, one more shadow stepped out, taller than the rest. The man was broad-shouldered and carried himself with distinguishment, a deliberate movement. His black hair was offset by strands of gray around his temple. It wasn't harsh, but his immeasurable gaze demanded their attention. The multiple medals and honors on his person immediately warned them as to who he was. He looked around curiously before his eyes landed on the one man that matched his gaze. Itachi Uchiha, I presume, the leader of this motley crew of vigilantes. Itachi stood silent for a moment before taking a step forward. General James Ironwood, I didn't expect to be honored by your presence in this facility. Well, it was a long flight to get here from Vale, but considering the audience and circumstances, I believe I should be here personally. Ironwood stared around at the group gathered in front of him. Amid the Midnight Stories group carrying the Uchiha name into the modern age, I can assume you know why you're here. Because you idiots don't know the difference between people helping and Faunus terrorists. Gurren elbowed the other aside after the blonde had angrily whispered his answer. We're keeping you here because we can't allow you to continue your illegal activities any longer. The Uchiha's secret fight against the White Fang is over. Yeah, because that's the best use of Atlas time. Deidara, no, you know what? Deidara stepped up. We're already in prison. What else are they gonna do to me? Torture me? Solitary confinement? Fine, but if that's how it's gonna be, then I'm gonna fucking speak up. The blonde general, what the fuck were you people doing focusing on us? Well, the White Fang got away. There were people in that group that posed a serious threat, but you arrested us instead. We're helping. We're stopping those bastards from slaughtering people left and right. We're doing more to stop them than your whole military ever did. Outside of the law? Yep, the law. The fucking law. He clapped. Great answer then, General Ironwood. Real convincing argument. That's enough. Itachi pulled his friend back and away before he could lose it any further. The Uchiha noticed one of the people behind the general narrow his eyes. The white-haired woman barely keeping her composure from retaliating for her general's sake. Ironwood seemed to take it in stride. The work you and your people have been doing against the White Fang can be considered minimal at best. Your group, while tenacious, is too small to leave a staggering impact against a group as large and international as the White Fang. If anything, we saved your lives by stopping you now. It wasn't good to let this state for the government and military flare up while they were in a compound like this with a Legion General, but he'd be lying if he said he didn't feel some form of anger at their complete disregard for everything they did. He had comrades and friends die for their cause, and this man shrugged it off without any hesitation. He would not, but you're right, we're not blameless in this matter either. Ironwood suddenly admit in silence the entire room of vigilantes, even making Itachi's eyes widen. James nodded. Your group saved many lives against terrible odds, but continued to fight anyway. You didn't leave you didn't leave a strong enough impression on the entire organization, but you fought anyway. Despite your lack of resources and manpower, you gathered information and acted upon it as swiftly as some of my best specialists. Some of your actions and methods cannot be tolerated, but it's clear that you all act with conviction for your cause. Itachi looked at Ironwood suspiciously before facing him. What is that about him? This is about facing the reality that there is still a fight to be fought at this moment, and knowing that we could just put away people like you, or we could come together and fight against it. You that are scoffed. You can't be serious. This is a great manner of my this is a great manner of my subordinates who take umbrage with this idea. Even I don't want to follow through with it, but it's becoming more and more clear that all we can do right now is respond to action and not prevent it or meet it prematurely. I would step forward. You all wanted to do your part in taking the fight and helping others, didn't you? I'm here offering you the chance to continue doing that, not outside of the law, but alongside it. You take us in and be what? A team under constant supervision, led under my orders and the guidance of my specialist. I would answer. You'll take on specific missions, specific training, and be integrated into our squads, focusing on your talents and helping us locate threats and enemies to the peace. We would supply you with the equipment and resources you need, but you would be under our leadership as well, so you won't be sneaking into cities and apprehending young civilians. Itachi looked back at the confusion and shocked expression of his people. They looked ready to crack his teeth with how opposed he was to the idea. Even a few of Ironwood's attendants looked apprehensive. The Uchiha looked at the Legion General and shook his head. Why would you do this? Ironwood remained silent before stepping up to Itachi. The military man whispered, because there are worse forces at work at this moment than just the White Fang. You believe you are saving the world from evil by stopping terrorists and threats like that, but it's only the beginning. If you know the terror and evils that were making moves in the shadows right now, and you were in my position, you'd realize that there was nothing you wouldn't do to stop them. Jim stepped back and announced across the room, I'll be giving you all a choice, which you are free to take as you wish. Stop fighting and remain in custody, or join us and continue the fight. Murmurs erupted around the whole room as opinions and ideas were shared. Members looked confused or alarmed, or just plain shocked by the chance they were offered. Some looked ready to take it. Others looked like they'd rather spend life in prison. Itachi just stared at Ironwood as Ironwood offered his hand. Do we have a deal? End of chapter 64.